There is a sound that sits at the very foundation of the human psyche, a frequency that can bypass logic and strike directly at the survival centers of the brain. It is the cry of a child. For thousands of years, we have been biologically programmed to respond to that sound with empathy, protection, and a desperate need to help. But what happens when that instinct is turned against us? What happens when the small, vulnerable form of a child becomes a vessel for something ancient, predatory, or deeply wrong? Across history and around the world, there are accounts of juvenile apparitions that do not seek comfort, but something much darker. This is an exploration of the ghost child, the ultimate subversion of innocence. Our journey begins in a small rental home at 3860 Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana. In November 2011, LaToya Ammons, her mother, Rosa Campbell, and LaToya's 3 children moved into what they hoped would be a quiet residence. Instead, they entered what would soon be known as the Demon House. It started with environmental anomalies that defied the laws of nature. In the dead of a Midwestern December, the screened-in porch became swarmed with large black flies. Despite the freezing temperatures, the insects returned in droves, no matter how many were killed, a phenomenon often associated with the demonic entity Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. But the flies were only a herald for the physical manipulation that followed. The family reported heavy footsteps ascending the basement stairs and the manifestation of wet boot prints across the kitchen floor in areas where no living person had walked. Soon, the children became the targets. LaToya witnessed her children's eyes roll back into their heads as their voices deepened into guttural, masculine registers. At 2 a.m. on March 10th, 2012, the family watched in horror as the 12-year-old daughter levitated above her bed in a state of total unconsciousness. They prayed until she was snatched back down, the girl having no memory of the event. The Ammons case is unique because it is backed by an 800-page dossier from the Indiana Department of Child Services, DCS, medical staff, and the police. The most chilling evidence occurred at Methodist Hospital's North Lake campus. While being interviewed by DCS family case manager Valerie Washington and nurse Willie Lee Walker, the 9-year-old boy began to growl and fixated on his grandmother with a weird grin. According to the official DCS report, the boy then walked backward up the wall to the ceiling and performed a backflip over his grandmother, landing on his feet. Washington testified that the boy did not run or use athletic momentum. He glided up the vertical surface as if gravity were non-existent. Terrified, the officials fled the room. This incident, witnessed by secular authorities, prompted the state to take emergency custody of the children, citing demons in the home as a factor in the instability of the household. If the Ammons case represents a localized haunting, the phenomenon of black-eyed children, or BEECs, describes something more migratory and predatory. These entities appear as children or teenagers with unnaturally pale skin and solid black eyes, voids with no iris or sclera. The modern legend began in 1996 in Abilene, Texas, when journalist Brian Bethel was approached in his car by 2 boys asking for a ride. Bethel described an immediate, overwhelming fight-or-flight response, a biological alarm that preceded his realization that their eyes were voids of solid black. A critical rule defines these encounters. The entities cannot enter a space, be it a car or a home, without a verbal invitation. This need for invitation draws chilling parallels to vampiric folklore. One Texas woman reported a pair of black-eyed children knocking on her door and making the nonsensical request for ketchup for their apple. Such requests are viewed as a technique used to distract the target, lowering their guard just enough to grant entry. In the United Kingdom, the forest of Cannock Chase has become a hotspot for these sightings. In 2022, a couple camping in the Birches Valley area heard a child's giggle at midnight. When they emerged, they saw a figure moving between the trees in ways humans simply can't move. The next morning, they found intricate stick formations hanging from tree branches and stone piles surrounding their tent, suggesting a territorial or ritualistic behavior. Not all ghost children are predatory. Some appear to be residual echoes of tragedy, trapped in the places where they once played. The Stanley Hotel in Colorado, the inspiration for The Shining, is famous for its 4th floor, where the sounds of children running and giggling are a near constant report. In room 418, guests frequently report the sound of children playing in the hallways at 3 a.m. when no families are checked into that wing. Housekeepers often find the beds in room 418 messed up immediately after cleaning, showing the indentations of small bodies jumping on the mattresses. A specific entity, a boy named Billy, is reported to haunt the first-floor museum. He is said to be attracted to female guests, often playing with their hair or tugging at their clothing. The Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles offers a darker version of this juvenile haunting. In 1944, a 19-year-old guest named Dorothy Jean Purcell gave birth to a child in her bathroom, unaware she was pregnant. In a state of temporary insanity, she threw the newborn baby out of the window. Guests have since reported the sound of a phantom infant crying in the hallways of the upper floors. This history of discarded lives seemed to culminate in the 2013 death of Elisa Lam, whose erratic elevator behavior, captured on CCTV, has been interpreted by some as her interacting with an unseen, potentially juvenile presence before her body was found in a rooftop water tank. The concept of the ghost child predates modern psychology, rooted in historical archetypes like the radiant boy of northern England. At Chillingham Castle, the Blue Boy was famous for haunting the Pink Room, where his heart-rendered cries would echo at midnight. This manifestation was supposedly solved in the 1920s when workmen discovered the bones of a young boy walled up in a 10-foot thick section of the tower. Next to the skeleton were fragments of blue fabric, suggesting the child had been buried alive centuries earlier. Similarly, at Corby Castle, the radiant boy was described as a beautiful child with golden locks, appearing as a bright flame before vanishing into the chimney, portent of great power, followed by a terrible end. Perhaps the most tragic archetype is the Icelandic Utburdur, a child ghost resulting from the historical practice of infanticide by exposure. These spirits were feared for their wails, believed to be bad omens. In the famous tale, Dear Mother in a Pen, a maid who abandoned her child heard the spirit of her infant singing from under the wall, offering its rag for her to wear to a dance. The maid reportedly descended into madness upon hearing the voice. These folklore accounts served as a collective psychological weight, ensuring that the victims of harsh social laws were never truly forgotten. In some cultures, the ghost child is not an accidental haunting, but a deliberate spiritual creation. In Thailand and Malaysia, the Kuman Thong, or Golden Boy, is a spirit child raised by masters of black magic, historically created from the remains of stillborn infants dried over fire and gilded in gold leaf. These spirits are treated as living children, provided with sweets and milk tea in exchange for wealth or protection. However, the relationship is dangerous. If the owner fails to maintain the offerings, the spirit turns on them. One Taiwanese account details a spiritualist who supposedly traded the lives of his wife and son to the spirit child for power and fame. The evolution of these stories into the 21st century is marked by cases like Dear David, a viral haunting documented by cartoonist Adam Ellis on social media. Ellis claimed to be haunted by a boy with a misshapen head who appeared in his dreams and eventually in his physical apartment. While later revealed as a fictional narrative, case utilized modern technology, security cameras, and smartphone recordings to create an interactive experience that tapped into the same primal fears as the Ammons case. Ultimately, the ghost child is a phenomenon that operates on 3 levels: residual energy, biological mimicry, and collective guilt. Whether it is a recording of a past trauma repeating in a hotel hallway, a non-human entity adopting a juvenile guise to gain entry into our homes, or a manifestation of a society's suppressed grief, the effect is the same. We are hardwired to protect the small and the innocent. When we see a child whose eyes are voids of black, who walks backward up a wall, or whose cries emanate from behind a bricked-up chimney, that instinct is shattered. The ghost child is a permanent fixture of our collective nightmares because it represents the one thing we are least prepared to face: the predator wearing the face of the one we were born to save.